Here's a chicken coop that I built for using the deep litter method. And basically what we have is about an 8 to 12 inch deep pocket where we can put this medium in here. And you want something that's high carbon. This is hemp straw and it works really well. The particles stay fine and it doesn't mat up like some of the other things that people try to use for their litter inside of a chicken coop. And basically what you're trying to create here is a aerobic environment to get your this is basically just a big composting system that naturally composts the chicken manure so that you don't have the ammonia smell. So if you have a anaerobic environment, you're going to have molds and you're going to have ammonia off-gassing that takes place from the type of microorganisms that grow in an anaerobic environment. And so that's one of the reasons that this particular type of litter works really well, because it, as you can see, it stays nice and fluffy. The chickens can scratch through that, and they actually turn this litter over. And so after this is completely broken down over a period of about, I'd say with the number of chickens I have, it'd take about 1.5 to 2 years. And then this will break down actually into soil that you can then use directly to fertilize for your garden, because it's broken down. If you use raw chicken manure and you put that straight onto your garden, you're going to burn it up. So that's one of the reasons to have a system to compost that chicken manure. So what we're trying to do here on the homestead is have a sustainable method for everything, and for each system to feed the next system. So this system is for composting, but you also get the benefit of having the eggs that the chickens produce. So we're going to take a look real quick at the egg hutch here and see what's going on. So inside of the egg hutch, I do use straw in there at times just because it's simple and easy to replace. But straw has got a higher nitrogen to carbon ratio. So this by itself would work good as a fertilizer. It's one of the reasons that people will put this on top of like new grass seeds and in gardens as a cover, because as this breaks down, it's releasing nitrogen into the soil. The problem is if you get this too thick where the air can't get completely to it, then you're going to be off-gassing ammonia gas, and that's going to defeat the purpose of it. So inside the litter, we want to have something that's carbon-based, which this grass is carbon-based, but it's too high in nitrogen. So we could use wood chips, we could use oak leaves, or a good one. And then if I was going to do oak leaves, I would put a bagger on the mower and then run over those leaves, chop them all up, and then use that as the bedding. Something else I want to show here with the chickens, if we're getting manure on the eggs, part of the cause of that is the coccidiosis that builds up in the chicken manure. That's another reason to do this deep litter method, is because it helps to break down that and to keep those microorganisms from flourishing. Another thing that I've done is increase the overhang all the way around the outside of the chicken coop and have good drainage there, so that I'm not getting a lot of, we just had a heavy rain and the soil inside of the chicken coop is still dry, and you can see the chickens are turning that over. So they're turning and mixing their manure in with the soil. So I can also add some carbon-based stuff to the inside of the chicken run, and that will also help to break down with the manure, but you want to usually do a lighter layer inside of the run. I've got a little bit of water spillage here next to my watering system, so that's the only place that I'm really developing any kind of ammonia smell. So the drier the litter, the better. They have enough moisture pretty much in their urine to be able to start the whole composting process. So you want a slow dry compost with the chicken manure. If you get it wet, it speeds everything up too fast, and you get the right the wrong kind of bacterial growth going on in there. So we're trying to integrate this whole system in with the other systems. And so then this system complements this system in that we can then take those manures and then add that for fertilizing in the garden. And having the chicken coop next to the garden is helpful because we can open up the gate after the growing season, let the chickens into the garden area, and they will fertilize right on top of the ground. They'll also clean up any of the extra plant material that may be remaining and to turn that back into chicken feed. So both these two systems are kind of complementary. And then weeds that come out of here, they can go either into the chicken coop, but normally I'll use grass clippings and put a light layer of grass clippings in the bottom of the chicken coop for their feed. Or the weeds that come out of the garden can go to feed the rabbits, and then the rabbits, they drop their manure pellets on the ground, and then I can rake these right up and then turn those back into fertilizer for my potting soil mix. And then the chickens are really working this area pretty good. They keep that rabbit manure turned over, so it breaks down quite nicely. Rabbits produce a cold manure, so you can take the rabbit manure and place it directly onto your plants without risk of anything burning up. But they're also a really good environment for earthworms and some of those bugs. So the chickens will sit there and they'll turn this over and get the bugs out of the ground that comes with the rabbit manure. So that's basically what we're trying to do is to incorporate as many systems working hand in hand as possible. And all of this is experimental, so as I go along, I'll change things and tweak them until I get things more where I want it. Like when I started, I didn't want to have electricity for my chicken coop, but I found this winter, since it got into the single digits Fahrenheit, that I was having trouble with the water freezing. In order to keep water to all my animals, I decided to go ahead and run power to keep the water heated just for my own convenience. So that seemed to be a worthwhile investment. And then the watering system for the rabbits, I need to do some work on that. But basically I have a plug-in bucket heater that sits inside of the bucket here, which is starting to develop some algae, so I need to take care of that. But so you just got one of these simple bucket heaters that fits in the bottom of the bucket, and that heats the water to keep it from freezing. And then I have a piece of heat tape that I've zip tied to the line, and we're getting a little bit of algae here, so I need to go ahead and cover that with some of this insulation to prevent that. And then inside the individual chicken cages themselves, I've got these nipples that give water to each cage, so then that way I'm not having to fill all these water bottles, which was the old system that I had, and I had to have all of those plugged in, and it was kind of a hassle to keep that whole system operating. Although it was effective, I did use it for a number of years. I decided to go to this bucket system, so I had one place to fill for the water, and that took care of all that. In the future, I'm going to be pulling the water line out here and adding a self-watering device, so that I have a float in there that automatically fills the container, so that I don't have to come out on a regular basis. So we're trying to get everything low maintenance, but it's a process, doesn't happen all at once. I had a water barrel here that I had planned on using with a pump system, and then I elected to just go with this system because it was a quick and easy solution for about, I don't know, $65-70 at the feed store. This water tank works really well. It's got a basically like a suction system that you fill up the inside of this container, and then you put the lid over the top of it, which I've insulated, and then that it's got a small valve in the bottom of it that when this water level drops down to a certain point, it'll suck air up into the container, which will release water down into the bottom and keep it at the same level, which hopefully keeps it from spilling over. But I don't really have that perfected. It tends to get dirty. The chickens are always kicking dirt up on it, and as it sucks the air back in, it's pulling dirt into the container as well. So I need to get this into more of an elevated position where that'll stop happening, get that up off the ground. But everything I did here was just quick in the winter, trying to get something set up, and didn't have a lot of time to perfect it. And then I've got some hooks here, and I just use these hanging feeders where I've got some ground up granite and some oyster shells to help with the oyster shells help with the egg shell production, and the granite helps with the gizzards on the birds in order to have some coarse material in there in order to be able to break down their food. And then the next thing I have is this feed trough system that I set up, which is a 50-gallon tub that has got the feeder ports in the bottom of it, and I've filled that up with some chicken scratch because the chickens seem to be doing real fine on chicken scratch, so I didn't want to pay the extra for layer pellets because they're producing eggs just fine, so why spend the extra money on it? And they're foraging and free ranging too, so this is basically just a supplemental. They'll spend the majority of their time out trying to forage for themselves, and unless I keep them locked in the coop, they're not really hitting this feeder that much, so that really extends the life of my feed. I've got some extra roost space that I've added in here. That just gives me an extra place for birds to be perching. Originally I did that because I had turkeys that I was raising with the chickens. That experiment worked okay. One of the problems that I had was when the turkeys jump down off of the roost, they'll often smash the baby chickens that are walking around on the ground. So I did lose a few chickens that way, but I ended up with some awesome turkeys that I was able to sell and recoup most of my cost for the turkeys. And then I added some lights in here that it just gives me the ability to come out here at night if there's an issue, or if I'm transferring birds, that I can turn these lights on to see what's going on inside the chicken coop. Or a lot of times I'll do my transfers at night if I'm moving birds around. So it's nice to be able to do that while they're calm and they're sitting on the roost, and you can just pick them up rather than having to chase after them. Then I have a timer system here that I put in, and I put in these rope lights to add some extra daylight for the winter time to try to increase my egg production. I didn't see a lot of benefit from that. My egg production pretty much stayed the same. So the one thing it did do is, because I have an automatic chicken door that runs off of a light sensor, once those rope lights turned on, it actually put enough light in here that the chicken door wouldn't close until after the rope lights went off, which I didn't really particularly care for that system. And I got the plug-in chicken door because it was cheap at the time when I bought it. In hindsight, I would probably go with one of the solar doors that's got the rope system instead of this door. This door's worked okay. It did get stuck one time this winter because the ice built up, and there's an adjustment inside of there that you can tweak to turn it so that it opens harder and closes harder to help break the ice up, which seemed to work. And then on the outside here, I need to add a chicken door. And for the temporary, I just had a piece of tin and a tire up on here because I've had some predators that were coming into my chicken yard and killing my chickens. So I've got some predator traps. I've got some live traps set up to try to see if I can catch whatever has been coming after my chickens. When I first set the traps up, I caught 12 raccoons and about 8 or 9 possums within a matter of about a week. So once you've got chickens, you've got predators that come directly afterwards. So I may move these traps around and try to set them up in a little bit different configuration. This was my old system for my rabbit tractors. I had basically just used scrap materials, built these boxes, and I had the troughs in there for the extra feed. I had the water bottles placed in here with a cord run to plug everything in for the winter time. And these I would just move around the yard to feed off of the grass. It wasn't the best system, but it was an okay system for the city. And I put the larger mesh in the bottom here to be able to keep the manure falling down through and the grass to be able to stick up through the wire. And that seemed to help to get the rabbits so they would actually feed on the grass, which was the idea of being able to move them around. So I had these little lawnmowers that I moved around every day and stuck them on a fresh spot. And it was an okay system. I could move it from the sunny parts to the shady parts depending on what the season was. But overall, I pretty much abandoned this system, and I'm going to go to the hanging cages now that I have the space and the availability to be able to do that. I am able to feed some of my grass clippings to the rabbits. So I just use a lawnmower with a bagger on there, and then usually 1 or 2 bags will fill the bottom of the chicken coop with a light layer of grass clippings. And then usually just 1 handful of grass clippings is about all the rabbit will eat. If you put too many grass clippings in there, they will start to mat down and decompose and start to have mold growth. One of the things you want to try to avoid with the chicken coop is any kind of mold growth and ammonia, because chickens are very sensitive to that. And that's one of the reasons that chickens are very prone to respiratory illness. So mismanaged chicken coops often are conducive to the respiratory diseases that affect these birds. And so all of your bird flus and stuff like that, you're not going to have the best experience possible with that if you have conditions where you've got an environment that doesn't support good bird health to begin with. A healthy bird will produce good eggs, and they'll not have the manure on the eggs. If you're starting to get the coccidiosis, you can add some apple cider vinegar and cayenne pepper, and there's some other natural formulas that you can use. And it doesn't affect the chickens, but it will inhibit the parasite growth that grows inside of their gut. So basically what happens is those parasites will get into their intestinal tract, and they will scar it up and create irritation and damage. And then when the eggs are being produced, the manure and the eggs basically all come out at the same time, and so that's why you end up with fecal matter on your eggs. So then you're transferring that into your house or whatever. So that's one thing to keep an eye on with the chickens. If you're starting to get poopy eggs, you can add some cayenne pepper to their feed. You can add it to their water, whatever seems to work the best for whatever your situation is. And then also, if you're transferring new birds to your chicken coop, there's a whole procedure that you need to go through to quarantine those birds and make sure that they're not going to bring any diseases into your flocks. On larger operations, they get really, really picky about that, so much to the point that they want you to remove your shoes or put booties on over the top of your footwear before you walk anywhere around where they're raising their chickens at, because you can spread diseases from one farm to the next just by walking around with the manure that sticks to the bottom of your shoes. So the rabbits are also an animal that's susceptible to the coccidiosis. With the rabbit tractors, I did lose a few rabbits because of coccidiosis before I really understood what was going on there. And then with the rabbits also, you can add the apple cider vinegar and stuff to their watering system, and that will help eliminate that. So if you're losing a bunch of animals unexpectedly and they're not able to maintain the nutrients from their feed, then coccidiosis is likely the cause of that. So that's something that you need to get on right away, because you get a big bloom of coccidiosis that can spread to your whole flock. So as long as your chickens are healthy, they will adapt to whatever coccidia are in their environment, and they will produce their own natural immunity to it. And so that's not a problem. It doesn't build up. But if they get overrun with it, then that's when you start having issues. So enjoy your chicken farming.